Good afternoon, Wrestling Inc. Welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am never on Wednesday, very rarely, I feel like, anymore. I'd like to welcome it back to the show in place of Brian Wool, who's getting ready for his wedding here in just a couple days, our good friend Alfred Konuwa. Alfred, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Great to be here. Congratulations to Brian. I did see Brian. We did a comedy show together recently. He was talking about his wedding, so it was great to meet him in real life. There is a picture on his IG right now of us, and we really just wanted to make you jealous, Nick, but it is good to be back together with you as well.
I saw you two hanging out together, and I was jealous. And I was like, it'd be really nice to be in that mix and hanging out and having cocktails right now because I never see anybody anymore, Alfred.
Oh, that would have been fun to have you there. You'd have had a great time.
That personal connection, I missed that. So, well, that's good. A little bit of a link here. And yes, best of luck to Biwo here as he gets ready to be married. We got a great show. A lot of news to talk about here for the past 24 hours. We're going to do the mailbag at the end of the show. We're going to talk about Tommaso Ciampa, maybe making the leap to the main roster, maybe somewhere else. We could talk about that later. And of course, the conversation has already started in our chat room. Wherever you're at, we got John here from West Texas over on YouTube saying hi. Esteban here from Oddville, Florida. Patrick Short. He's just excited about the possible new AEW signings. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. Ali, Kristen, Smiler Warner. I like that name a lot. Just saying, yo.
Me too.
That's a good name. All right, let's get to it here. News you can use, news you'll leave a bruise. We will start off with the reported signings and people that will be backstage. We'll do a double dose here. So Fightful had two kind of back-to-back updates here just a few hours ago. The first one saying Ring of Honor World Champion Jonathan Gresham. He's going to be backstage at tonight's AEW Dynamite in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The other report saying AEW is about to sign Swerve the Realist, formerly Isaiah Swerve Scott, FKA Shane Swerve Strickland, some version of Swerve. He has recently been on the Daily. He did not shoot down the idea of him going to AEW at all. And he tweeted a winky face to the report, maybe letting everybody in. So what do you think about these two names being in the AEW orbit now, Alfred?
Very excited for both names. I think it's kind of long overdue for Jonathan Gresham in that the AEW show, I figured he would be at the top of their wish list, but he is still in many ways carrying the torch for ROH, and he's got Terminus going on, which is dope. And I very much support that. So I love, the possibility of Gresham and AEW. He's one of these guys who people are always going to bring up his height, but I think that's one of the things that makes him unique in that this guy is so impressive to watch in the ring and what he can do and how convincing he is grappling. And he's just got a style that is not similar to very many people in wrestling. I really fancy him like kind of a Zack Sabre, but a hybrid because he can hit hard as well. So I really love Gresham and I love Swerve Scott. I mean, Hit Row I thought was going to change wrestling. I had very, very, very high hopes in Hit Row. And unfortunately, due to forces outside of their control, that was eventually shuttered and maybe within their control, who knows, depending on who you talk to. But I'm very happy for Swerve the Realist to be in AEW. I think that would be a great addition for them.
Yeah, it's always a double-edged sword with these, kind of announcements these days because it's like, yes, I'm super happy to see people I like getting opportunities, right? Like I could think of a couple things both these guys could do. I'll mention here in just a moment, but like there's also the AEW trend for some talent where you get signed, you come in and then like kind of nothing really happens. You kind of, maybe float your way onto Rampage. And if it doesn't really work out on Rampage, maybe you float down to Dark. There's a lot of talent there right now. It's not a guarantee, even with how good these guys are, that there could be something meaningful there for them, if that makes sense.
It 100% does, and I would point that out as possibly AEW's biggest weakness, and I think this reflects oftentimes in the ratings, is they have these cycles that they go where they've got so much going on where somebody will fall out of favor after they just kind of gave them kind of a push, but then they'll fall off, and that follow-through, I think, has been tough on AEW. I don't think they've quite mastered the art of capitalizing on all this talent. So yes, to your point, on one hand, I'm very glad they're getting this opportunity, but in the back of my mind, I'm always going to be thinking to myself, okay, how long until these guys fall off the face of the earth and we don't know what they're doing?
Dude, I would love to be a fly on the wall to see how the jockeying is going for main event pushes over at AEW right now, because Meltzer was just, I guess, on this podcast for Live Pal earlier today, and we just ran an article literally just before we came on the air here today with some of his comments from that. And part of it is Meltzer saying that, like, maybe Cody didn't feel like he was going to get the same kind of push. Maybe there are people going to be pushed above him. And if there are people that are going to get pushed above Cody, that is some sharks in the water type environment, right? Like if a guy like Cody is not seeing himself as somebody who's solid enough in his spot to maintain his position, it's, as rosy as it looks on the outside and everybody loves the AEW train, you got to believe that there's some real jockeying going on right now amongst these heavy hitters to make sure they get their TV time and opportunities.
Very much so. Much more jockeying. You could argue it's much more top heavy in terms of who gets really pushing AEW. But at the same time, there is going to be much more politics in terms of that line and who can penetrate through that glass ceiling. I think that's something that AEW is going to need to find out in terms of who they want to prioritize. And also because there's so much less TV time on AEW. So we're not talking about a company with, they have Rampage and Dynamite, but those are like complement shows. They're not two different brands where you can be world champion on either. And that political situation kind of helps solve itself through that. It has to be one champion, and I think that makes it worse.
Yeah, for sure. And, with Gresham, he's the kind of guy I feel like you said, like he seems like a natural fit kind of for them. I look at what Danielson's doing right now. There's like a couple ways you could go with that. Right? Like he wants to be a mentor to some young talent before they become tainted or something like that. I wouldn't call Jonathan Gresham old by any stretch. And I know it's a little weird to have the Ring of Honor world champion being mentored by anyone, but you've got Bryan going into the Ring of Honor Hall of Fame. And I wonder with Gresham around here with that Hall of Fame stuff, because you got Punk and Bryan both going in. Does Tony Khan do something with them for Supercard? Would they lend Bryan to do a match with a Gresham to give that show some spark and kind of lean into the Hall of Fame stuff? That's where my mind kind of goes when I think about what's going on with Gresham right now.
I could see that happening. I mean, this thing that Tony Khan's talking about, a massive announcement, potentially could be some sort of super card. And there's obviously already a working relationship between AEW and ROH. They're always going to be forever linked just because of All In being the precursor to AEW. And that was an ROH show. And you've seen the talent exchange, at least from AEW to ROH. And I would not be surprised or rule out the possibility of AEW and ROH coming together. And I think Jonathan Gresham would be the first person that Bryan Danielson would ask to work with.
Man, it's a different kind of, like with New Japan, it's great, and there's some like stuff there. I mean, they haven't really brought a Bullet Club. It's been mostly chaos people, if you haven't noticed. So there's not like friction with their top guys or whatever they do. But with Gresham, with Ring of Honor, I mean, there's a million different ways you can go with the ROH rep coming into the AEW territory, playing off all the history you brought up there. I'm very interested. I'm interested in seeing Swerve in that space too. But I think with Gresham, there's just so much you could play with there. I hope they give it a chance.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think Gresham would immediately, if they just gave him the ball, could immediately. I feel the same about Swerve, the realist, but I do feel strongly about Gresham in terms of somebody who could be one of the best in the world if given the platform.
Yeah, and I want to see him and Danielson so bad. And I know both those guys want to do it, and so I really, really hope it happens. While we're talking AEW, we're going to switch over to our betting section here today. We're going to talk about some odds for Revolution next weekend, and then we also have some odds for WrestleMania 38. So we'll start with Revolution. According to Bet Online, they're saying Hangman Page is favored to retain his title over Adam Cole. Britt Baker is the underdog in her match against Thunder Rosa, and CM Punk is favored to defeat MJF in the dog collar match. What do you think of the lines here, Alfred, coming out of Bet Online for this pay-per-view?
I think they're fair. I think those are the three results I expect, even down to Thunder Rosa upsetting, you maybe think, because she's actually a slight favorite right now, but beating Britt Baker, yes, I do see that happening, because maybe they're telling this year-long story of Britt Baker has never been able to beat Thunder Rosa, and here she is in a match that's going to count on her record, and maybe she comes up short again. I would not be surprised if Thunder Rosa won, and I would not be surprised if CM Punk lost. However, I fully expect him to win against MJF. I really do think that CM Punk's all about putting over MJF, but the fact that they continue to put over the fact that he lost to MJF twice in one night, even CM Punk said that, I think this is now going to be the receipt for Punk.
So does this set up a rubber match then between the two guys, you think? You think we get one more in the trilogy between MJF and CM Punk after this?
Possibly we could. I think the next time we see them after this is going to be for the AEW World Title. So it could be a situation where MJF does win, and then maybe when CM Punk is ready to win that title, he beats MJF in Chicago at All Out. Maybe that's a long-term plan. But I do think this is being set up for a future match down the road of MJF versus CM Punk for the strap.
So you think the winner coming out of this is going to be whoever's set up next for supposedly Hangman Page? Is that kind of where your head's at right now?
That's where I kind of think, yes, that I think it's time for MJF. And I think Hangman Adam Page is a big star, and I think he was great chasing the title. I think he's had some great matches with the title with Bryan Danielson. I thought his match against Lance Archer was really good, but it just doesn't seem like he's the world champion. There's something about his momentum that I think he kind of stalled. He's not presented as the biggest star on that show. And I just think that title belongs with this program with MJF versus CM Punk. That story, I think, especially because the Wardlow aspect is there, I think the world title would really raise the stakes of what this feud's become.
So we have here Leo Pereira here saying, time for Wardlow to betray MJF. Kristen, of course, saying, how does Wardlow get involved? Dude, people love Wardlow right now.
Yes.
It is wild. The Wardlow train has left the station in a big way. I don't know that I want to see him help MJF lose or win. Something after the match, maybe. But I think there's got to be some decisiveness here. I can't go through another. We already got all the shenanigans in the bout before. Yeah. I don't need Wardlow coming in and power bombing one of these guys to cost the other the finish. That's just not that's not my appetite for this match.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to see Wardlow get involved either, but I think it's inevitable based on the fact that it is this dog collar match, which is not going to have disqualification rules, and Wardlow has been such a big part of the storyline. I think, unfortunately, they're going to continue to do that. I agree that they should kind of lessen it, but I did like how it was done the last time with you didn't see it until they showed the replay, or at least I completely missed how I'm given the ring, and I do think that they did a good job of using that in the storyline, but I expect more Wardlow in this dog collar match.
Yeah. Well, and I could see Punk picking up the win here, and after the match, MJF and Wardlow get in each other's face, and then you get the turn, then you could spin Punk off into, challenging Hangman Page, being the next one in line, and you got MJF and Wardlow going the other direction there. I just don't know how long they're going to have Hangman Page keep this championship. I mean, I'm a Hangman Page. I like Hangman Page, but there's no bite to me with any of his title matches at the moment. I don't know if it's because we over believe he's going to win, or I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is right now. The issue with Page.
I completely agree. It's just cyclical with wrestling sometimes. And I just think the thing might have been, and this is completely out of his control, nobody's being blamed or anything. There was that time that he took off that it looked like that was the window that they were going to crown him champion. And he felt so piping hot that I think if he would have won around September in Flushing Meadows, then he would have been able to carry that type of momentum. And I do think that it stalled a little bit. He did get some of it back, but I just don't think he got back to that level. And when he finally got that big moment, it was really cool. But since then, he just has not felt like a world champion.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's flip over here to some WWE talk. We'll look at WrestleMania 38. Bet Online. Here are their betting line odds for WrestleMania 38's 4 big bouts so far. Brock Lesnar, early odds-on favorite to beat Roman Reigns. Ronda Rousey favorite to beat Charlotte Flair. Bianca Belair is listed as the favorite to beat Becky Lynch. And The Miz and Logan Paul are favorites to beat the Mysterios. How do you feel about these lines here, Alfred?
Very interesting. I expect a couple of those to change. I
know. Yeah, right.
Don't know about Miz and Logan Paul going over. We'll see about that. Maybe. Who knows? Brock Lesnar, that kind of surprised me that he opened as a favorite. I feel like the smart money will go toward Roman Reigns. I just feel like we're finally getting a Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match around WrestleMania that everybody's on board with, because they went to that well a couple of times in the past, and one of the ugliest scenes I've ever seen at a WrestleMania, that WrestleMania 34 where Roman's bleeding and people are pissed and just pooping all over the match. But we're doing it and we're all on board. And I just think that the only way you can tell this story is Roman Reigns beats Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Finally, it's a great story for this character that they have, which is really one of the only, if not the only, really hot full-time character they have. And it's a great storyline arc in that finally at WrestleMania, Roman Reigns beat Brock Lesnar.
See, here, the only reason I could think that they wouldn't do it is if Brock is having so much fun. He is in a different world right now, and he's loving it. And it's I'll stick around to SummerSlam. Maybe I'll give you another year. I'm having such a good time being this Brock Lesnar babyface thing. And everybody's like, Well, hey, there's a lot of money in that. Maybe if you want to throw something else into it, I was reading about the Rock's schedule going into April of next year. A little more complicated than usual, not just because of all of the movie stuff that he has going on in his TV show Young Rock, but of course the XFL is going to be launching early in 2023. I know the spring or the training camps are going to start in January, so he's going to be deep into the weeds. Do it, just so many connections there. And so, like, realistically, if they know the Rock thing's not going to happen and Brock wants to stick around, I guess maybe that flips the script a little bit, but it would have a lot of things would have to fall into place for that to make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And, he doesn't really have to be WWE champion or world champion. I mean, they could still take it off him and bring him back for whatever because he's got that gravitas. But I could see them wanting to keep that title on him if he is to negotiate something and they know they have him long term.
Yeah, for sure. And JTO98 here saying, Roman's not going to lose until 2023. This does just kind of feel like the long, big build to the match with The Rock. But, man, I was talking a little bit about it the other day. Sami Zayn's the best part of SmackDown for me now. It is
100%.
It is no longer Roman Reigns. And I don't know what to make. Does Roman Reigns losing the title and becoming unhinged to get it back? Maybe Brock taking it off him to get to that point. Maybe that is because I'm starting to get a little bored by the long, slow walk to start the show every week, some shenanigans with the Usos, and then like a dark, gravelly promo and Paul Heyman glaring over his shoulder. Like I kind of get the rhythm they've found with Roman Reigns,
Yeah, there needs to be a direction to this, and I am not 100% comfortable with them holding out hope The Rock's coming back, and we'll keep this thing going until 2023 because it's good now. But I mean, I've been watching wrestling too long to know that things overstay their welcome all the time. It is just the nature of this business. It doesn't have an off season, and if they expect that by 2023, Roman Reigns doing this character is still going to be hot with this crowd and this day and age, not going to happen. He will become Roman Reigns in 2015 if they continue to march, as you said, toward 2023 this same way. There definitely needs to be involvement, and they definitely need to plan this thing like 3-4 months out instead of another year of something that they don't know is going to happen.
Now I'm kind of like mixed on the main event. Now I don't really kind of know where they would go. I mean, I guess a lot of ways it's what makes for a good main event. With the women, I think Bianca beating Becky, it has to happen. I think people will be very upset if Becky beats Bianca Belair at WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, very upset. I mean, maybe they'll see that as, well, this will finally get Becky booed the way we want her to. Although she is finally starting to get those heel reactions, but this should beat Bianca Belair. Again, another good storyline arc is that she got hosed at SummerSlam. It was a bad scene, and now they can rectify that. Get her comeuppance on the biggest stage. I would love that.
Do you think they flip it? You think they have her beat Becky in just a couple seconds?
Oh, very interesting. I think that could be fun. I really want to see Bianca and Becky have a match at WrestleMania. I think it would be fire. I think it would be a top 3 match at WrestleMania if they let them go. But I mean, that is poetic justice. You could say that.
Yeah, and with Ronda and Charlotte, I mean, you would think that Ronda is going to get the win over Charlotte here. I mean, it's just her return match and everything. Right? Yes. Should I overthink that or no?
No, I expect Ronda to absolutely win. And, we're probably going to get another year similar to when she was here last, where most of it she was a champion. And then when they want to really put somebody over by the end, they'll beat Ronda. And that'll probably be Charlotte, who needs to win less than anybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, lastly here, as we're talking Mania season, big name always comes up this season. The Rock, we've just been talking about him. Well, he took some time out of his day to put over Montez Ford of the Street Profits on Instagram. There was an exchange that began when Rock posted a clip from Ryan Satin's recent out-of-character interview with Montez Ford. Ford talked about how The Rock was one of his early inspirations and how he still feels that about him these days. The Rock reposted Ford's commented on the very special bond they share as pro wrestlers who have never shared a ring together. He praised Ford over his passion for pro wrestling, commented on how they share the same DNA. He also included a clip of Ford hitting the frog splash on Dolph Ziggler and commented on how he flies like WWE Hall of Famer Superfly Jimmy Snuka. He went on and said he will be right there rooting for Ford when he becomes world champion one day. Well, that certainly doesn't hurt, I'm sure, in the WWE offices.
Yeah. Very few endorsements that are more valuable than that one. That's unbelievable endorsement and a good end to Black History Month, even though we do have 5 more days. The great all-time Black wrestler, The Rock, putting over Montez Ford, who I agree. I think whenever they're ready to push him as a singles, which I still enjoy the Street Profits, especially as a team. I love them together. It would just break my heart if they just Marty Jannetty'd Angelo Dawkins, because I do think that he's one of the more underrated guys on that roster. I think he's very excited in terms of potential full package. But I think that Montez Ford, whenever he's ready to be a singles, is the sky is the limit. And I think he could be a world champion. Absolutely. I love it.
I agree. I don't see any reason for the Street Profits to kind of be kiboshed in the immediacy, especially since it's like so in the winds these days where people do and do not get booked on the card, and they seem to have a really solid act right now. So ride it while you can. But it is really, really obvious there is something special about Montez Ford. I don't want to go so far as to say Angelo Dawkins would get Marty Jannetty, because I think he's much more talented.
Yes.
I don't want to say the Marty Jannetty, because Marty Jannetty was also very talented.
Very.
But he has a lot of great skills. He's very engaging. He's good on the mic. I could see him. They would probably reposition him, I'm guessing, with somebody else or like a group of people would be my guess, while Montez goes off and becomes the single star. Just a hunch.
Yeah, that would be nice if they could just find a role for him on TV. He's one of those guys who could overachieve and just deliver WWE's material in a way that's engaging to the viewer. And I think that's invaluable because there's not a lot of people like that.
All right, Alfredo, I want to thank you for joining me at the top of Show Talk, all the news of the day. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Great conversations going on here in the comment section, like this one from Jamie Salmons. When will we have an Elias return?
Good question.
Do you think we see Elias return before or after Veer comes to Raw?
I'm going to say after. I expect Veer sometime between now and WrestleMania, and I expect Elias maybe the night after WrestleMania when they're moving forward with their next season. But, this Veer thing, I think they've stumbled on something accidentally. I'm really into Veer. He's like one of my favorite wrestlers right now.
Who is not into Veer? How can you know? It's been nothing but pure hype for 4 months, right?
He's the Twitter wrestler. He's Twitter's wrestler.
It's like it's got shade to Hook, right? Because everybody was
does.
Hook. Oh, Hook's around. I see him there. He's the kid in the hoodie. Oh, that Hook kid. All right, whatever. Came out. Everybody, after wondering what Hook was going to do, made a good impression. Hook's over, right? Yeah, Veer, I'm about it. Raw after Mania.
Yes.
Maybe, right?
That's the perfect crowd. If they could just, and the more they hold it off, the more zany this gets and the more fun it becomes. So if they could just keep this monster growing into the night after WrestleMania, even if it is irony, he will be the most over guy in that building.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think that the crowd, the night after WrestleMania, you know what? Yeah. I'm sad I won't be there. I chose not to go to Raw after Mania this year because I'm usually just like fried.
I'm leaning against going to WrestleMania, but I swear to God, if you told me, hey, if it leaked that the night after Mania, Veer's going to be there, I'm buying my ticket. I'm getting on Southwest.
No, I'll be at Mania this year. I filled out my media credential today. So
look at you.
I had to give them my fingerprint, a little bit of blood, and some hair. It's a very complicated process. I don't know why I had to give them that much, but it's WrestleMania, baby. So let's dive into the mailbag here today. At Wink Daily, WINC Daily. That's the account to follow if you want to vote in the daily polls. As a reminder, also follow at Wrestling.com because once again, our account was suspended over something we didn't do, which was, I guess, allegedly share Olympics video. We didn't do that. And so while that's getting sorted out, we don't have an account. We have an account. It's at Wrestling.com, but that's not our account. So heads up. So follow at Wink Daily if you want to vote the daily polls. Isn't that suck? Did you know that?
I knew it got taken out. I didn't know that's why it was. I didn't know it was a copyright thing.
Yeah, dude, it sucks. It makes no sense. I feel so bad for all of us at Wrestling Inc. right now to have that taken from us over nothing. All right, get it figured out, Twitter. All right, so today's poll question: who do you want to see Tommaso Ciampa feud with on the main roster? Now, this stems from a video that WWE put out. It is from after NXT went off the air last night. Of course, Ciampa lost to Dolph Ziggler with some shenanigans from Robert Roode there of the Dirty Dogs. Then he did this heartfelt address to the NXT fans. This is Ciampa. Now, he was brimming with passion. He looked back at his journey. He's been dealing with injuries. He's been going back and forth from the main roster at NXT. A lot of people have interpreted this as a possible farewell to NXT. I'm leaning main roster, although they did do the Gargano thing, and then he actually did leave. Has not shown up in AEW, but similar. I think this means Ciampa's main roster bound. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel like they're transitioning him to the main roster, but there are those stories out now that there's going to be more interaction between NXT and Raw, like we saw with Dolph Ziggler and Tommaso Ciampa wrestling those 2 nights in a row. But I can see Tommaso Ciampa eventually going to Raw. I'm very interested to see how they would book him. I don't know how far he would go, just based on the administration and what they're looking for. But I like seeing him with Dolph Ziggler. Both guys seem energized because they're both in the similar situation where they've just been doing the same thing with the same opponents for years now. And I think both guys are really excited to fight each other.
Dude, I agree. First of all, I think Ciampa, and I was worried about how he would look on the main roster just because the size of wrestlers is bigger on the main roster and it's a little bit different aesthetically, but he looked fine. I was like, this guy looks like he belongs in a main roster ring. And as soon as I saw that and I saw how he was working with the talent in the ring, I was like, I'm not really so worried about it anymore. He has a kind of gruffness that's like Steve Austin-esque that you don't really see anymore. And I think that would be really hard to be lost on people like Vince and others in the back, this kind of natural, intensity this guy is bringing right now. So I definitely think moving to the main roster. As for the Dirty Dogs, while you were mentioning those two, this is the most I have been interested in this tag team ever, period.
100%.
The angle they did in NXT with Bobby Roode or Robert Roode acting all doing the shenanigans with the cameraman gimmick, and then the big hug in the ring to end the show, I was like, this is the biggest deal, the most cohesive the Dirty Dogs have ever felt in the history of their WWE run. And this, for no other reason, is proof the NXT Raw stuff is working.
Yeah, and they got a lot of heat. I was just watching that. Like, they never get heat like this in Raw. And they just went off the air as the biggest heels in Orlando. Yeah, it's good. They're doing good work. The best work of their careers as the Dirty Dogs, for sure.
Oh, so good. And the thing about it, too, is I can see people that are on SmackDown when the draft comes around. Like, the draft actually kind of starts to mean a little bit more, right? Because if you're like, oh man, there's this kid down in NXT, I'd love to do a program with him. They're like, well, you're on SmackDown, you got to be on Raw because it's the NBC Universal bubble. Maybe when the draft comes along, we can move you over here, and that'd be possible.
Yeah,
that's actual stakes, and it's a little kind of inside baseball, but it's actual stakes to the draft, and it starts to show some difference between these two brands that are so very, very similar.
Yeah, that's exactly what the draft should be. They need to be thinking way out in advance of how can we make it to where when we get to the draft, it matters who goes where.
Yeah. So I asked you all, so who do you want to see Ciampa feud with on the main roster? The options I gave were Finn Balor, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, or somebody else. Well, it looks like I hit the nail on the head 3 times over because everybody else only got 1.4%. So we had 100 votes here, 43.1% for Randy Orton, 30.6% for Seth Rollins, and 25% for Finn Balor. Are you okay? It sounds like there's like a vampire or something in your room all of a sudden.
No, I think that was my phone vibrating.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's all kinds of noise that I didn't know if you were in trouble or something like that.
That and the vampire. Yes, there's a vampire in my waiting room, but everything else is fine.
Okay, wonderful. So Randy Orton won the poll, 43.1. Seth Rollins second place, 30.6, and Finn Balor in third place with 25%. Still pretty close. And the big takeaway from me here is there are a lot of people fans want to see Tommaso Ciampa work with on the main roster.
Yeah, that's good. Randy Orton would be my pick as well. Just they add the Twitter history, and that Randy Orton, I think, would love to work with a guy like Tommaso Ciampa. But there are a lot of potential matchups if they're able to get Tommaso Ciampa over the way they did in NXT and just tell them that he is the best or one of the best people to ever come out of NXT and treat him like he's somebody to be reckoned with. I think he could have a lot of good matches that people would care about.
All right, before we wrap it up here, for whatever reason, a bunch of people jumped in. They're asking a bunch of Cody stuff. So we'll wrap talking Cody because why not? He's the center of the wrestling universe, I guess, right now. James Jones, when are we going to see Cody on Raw and SmackDown? Nadia, when is Cody going to debut in AEW? And Groose512, what if Cody wins the WWE Championship, brings back the big gold belt? I don't see really that happening. When do you think Cody gets involved? What are your expectations here?
I think the sooner the better. I don't want to sound impatient or whatnot, but he is at the top of a news cycle that is forever changing. We have heard that there are rumors now, not only of Stone Cold Steve Austin, but of an Austin caliber level person coming to WrestleMania. So let's say that leaks. That'll be bigger than the Cody news, and it'll just mean less and less. It's very kind of similar to me to the Bret Hart situation. He fell into WCW's lap. They could have immediately run him out on TV while he was the hottest thing in wrestling and really just kind of taken the momentum and had it for a lot longer. But they waited, and by the time, and this is Bret Hart, one of the biggest stars ever.
I remember.
It meant very little, but that was also a creative thing and whatnot. But if they wait too long on Cody Rhodes, I do believe that it'll be one of those things where, it's about time, and it won't really hit the way I think it should.
100% agree with you, Alfred. All right, everybody, we'll put a button on it there for today. I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Paul Pratt, a.k.a. Polio Del Mar. If you like this show, support Wrestling Inc. Daily on whatever podcast platform you want. All those ratings and comments, they really help lift us up the chartable charts, which is, what we live for. That is my entire life is chartable. And so if you really want to give me a boost, do that. Also go to WrestlingInc.com. Support us on all our socials. Again, for the time being, at WrestlingInc.com over on Twitter. Be sure to follow that. And come back here tonight after Dynamite for the Wrestling Inc. podcast. It's a lot like this show, but, at night they talk Dynamite and a bunch of the other news. So, Alfred, anything you want to put over here before we wrap up the show today?
Follow me on Twitter at This Is Nasty, YouTube Pro Wrestling Bits, and I'll have an interview on Forbes with the one and only Booker T. Should be a lot of fun. Talked to him earlier. They say never meet your heroes. I met Booker T. He's a great guy.
I love Booker T. Oh, I'm so happy to see. That's the end of Black History Month there, right? It's not the Rock Podcast Award, Booker T and Alfred Konuwa.
Yeah.
All right. That makes me happy. All right. I am at Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.